Hi, I'm Ashley Hammond.
And I'm Locke Hammond.
We're married.
We run a business together.
And we homeschool our 4 kids.
That makes us sound a little crazy.
I think people might think we're a little crazy.
Well, through all that crazy, we're here to help you blaze your own trail through a world designed for conformity.
And break the chains holding you back from living an uncommon life.
This is Trailblazers and Chainbreakers. All right. We're talking about something today. You want to get us started? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Talking about not talking, actually.
Yeah, we are. There are times where my greatest accomplishment was just keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah. I like that one. I like that one because it grabs your attention, but it's also true for me. And I'm sure there are people listening who might not have the same struggle, and maybe you're a better person than I am. Maybe you're just different. I don't know. But I think back to like the regrets I have in my life. And there are some regrets I have because I didn't like do things. But in terms of words, the only regrets I have are saying things that I shouldn't have said. I don't have regrets where I should have said something that I didn't, right? Like I have regrets in other areas, but in terms of words spoken, it's a safer bet for me to keep my mouth shut in times of stress. And I look at our relationship, it's totally true. I look at my parenting, it's totally true. When in doubt, like it's literally become one of my rules. When in doubt, just like shut up. It's not the nicest sounding way to put it, but when I'm angry, when I'm not sure whether I should say something, when I'm questioning whether I should say this or that, the answer is always, or the correct answer, I don't always listen, but the correct answer is always, no, just keep your mouth shut. And anytime I do that, my life is better off for it. Like if we take our relationship as an example, there are so many fights that we had, and we've said this many times before, there's so many fights that we had that if we had just stopped, if we had taken a breath, if we had stopped, if we had kept our mouths shut, it wouldn't have mattered whatever someone was frustrated about or whatever someone said, it wouldn't have mattered 5 minutes later. But because we didn't keep our mouth shut, it still mattered 5 days later. It was still a problem 5 days later. And I think that's a perfect example of the truth of this. There are times when my greatest accomplishment was just keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually get noticed. Like I'm the only one that knows I want to say blah, but it's still a fantastic accomplishment and no one else has to see it, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's true for you too. Do you feel like that's true for you too, or is it different?
I mean, yeah, most of the time when I'm like upset or frazzled, if I just stay silent, it's better until I can come to a place where I'm calm and in a better state of mind. And a lot of the times I've said, like, I used to be someone that tended to like hold stuff in until I like just exploded. And if I would have had the conversations when that stuff came up one at a time versus letting it all just spew inside, things would have been completely different.
I wanted to pick this apart a little bit because I think the two categories that this feels the most true for me are obviously our relationship and then my parenting. But I wanted to kind of go category by category, and you can throw anything else out that you have as we go. But let's start with like relationship, like how either lessons that you learned in a relationship about the power of words, right? Or tips and tricks and techniques or whatever it is to actually get better, because it's easy to say this, right? It's easy to say, oh, just keep your mouth shut. But from my experience talking with other guys, it's a lot easier said than it is done. It's easy to understand, oh, I should just walk away right now. But like I've had moments where I think that thought and I still stay and I still say something that I shouldn't say, right? Or I look at the kids and I'm like, I really shouldn't pick at them right now. I don't need to say this, just let them be. And then 3 seconds later, I'm saying exactly what I was thinking. So I want to start off, if you want to jump in at any point, just jump in. But like starting off with the relationship, I'll share one thing that was really impactful for me. I don't even want to call it a technique so much as just a line of thinking, but in my head, I call it the eject button. And years ago, my mom had bought me, if anybody's seen like James Bond movies, he has like an eject button in some of his cars where he can shoot the bad guy. Some of the older ones, he can shoot the bad guy's seat right out of the car. And years ago, my mom bought me like a little cigarette lighter adapter thing to plug in, and it said eject on it. And I found that a couple months ago, buried kind of in the glove box of my truck. And I pulled it out and I put it in because I thought it was it was always funny to me. But now, like being a decade into our relationship, having 4 kids, I see the importance of this concept, this metaphor of like needing that eject button on a daily basis. And so even like small things, even if we're not about to get into a blow up screaming fight. So I put this under like relationship category, but I think it's just as important as a parent too. But like I said in the beginning, there were so many fights that you and I had that if we had just taken a breath, taken a step away for a minute, it wouldn't have mattered 5 minutes later. But because we didn't do that, it ended up being a long-standing issue, a big, huge blow-up fight. And one of the most impactful things for me, and for me, if you've listened to us at all, you know that humor is very helpful for me. And especially in a moment of stress or anger or emotion, the humor of picturing myself hitting the eject button or like in a fighter jet, like pulling the eject handle and just shooting way out the roof into a different room almost. It helps me kind of be humble, and it also helps me come back to what matters with a little bit of humor. And in my head, I'm like, okay, eject, and oftentimes I'll just walk away. Sometimes that's necessary, or my mouth will just start going without any connection to my brain. But the idea of an eject button, I think it's one of the greatest skills that I'll just speak for men. I don't know if this is equally true for you or if you want to speak for women, but one of the greatest skills a man can learn in his relationship is to just walk away. The things that come to your mind don't always need to be said. And if you took 5 minutes away, you probably could say it in a way that would actually get the point across. And so, like, is the point of saying it to be mean, to rip your partner apart, to start a fight, to make her hurt? Or are you actually trying to get your point across? Because if you're actually trying to get your point across, you're going to be more successful in doing that if you hit the eject button for a couple minutes and you come back when you or her or both of you are calmer and more willing to have like a rational thought. And sometimes if it's a big issue, like the eject button, it needs to be longer than 5 minutes. But for me, that was that metaphor, that visual, even just putting that in my truck so that I see it whenever I get in the truck, maybe not daily, but whenever I get in the truck, is been helpful to me to keep that idea top of mind. And I still screw it up. I still say things I shouldn't say to you, to the kids. There are times I should just walk away that I don't. But that idea, that metaphor of an eject button has been incredibly helpful for me. I don't know if you think along those lines either. I'm sure you're not picturing James Bond movies, but what do you think about the eject button?
That doesn't work for me. You're a very visual person though.
Yeah.
So visualizing something is very important to you. So if you're a visual person, I can see that really helping. I don't know. There's not a simple answer for me, because I think with a lot of this comes emotional maturity, like where you are at emotionally and your ability to talk yourself off of a ledge. I think it's easier for me because my negative go-to used to be to run away during fights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't want to be anywhere near fights. Like I would run away. So I guess the healthier version of me still it's easier for me to walk away and not say something, I think, maybe than you, because of my unhealthy habit. Like when I feel myself about to say something or that I shouldn't be saying, it's easier for me to not say it or walk away than say it.
Yeah.
And then now, instead of like spewing and letting it build up a million things, I'll come back and talk about it if it's worth talking about. Because a lot of the times there's these situations that make us really angry or make us really mad. And if we walk away and we think about it, we reflect on it, most of the time, like for me, I don't know if this is true for you, but things aren't even worth talking about. Like it had nothing to do with you or the kids. It was something that was going on with me. And it's not even worth like bringing back up again. And then there are some things that are worth bringing back up when you're like calm and settled down.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, this is just something that I think comes easier for me because my go-to was to walk away when I felt confrontation.
I'm curious if, I think you're right. It definitely came easier to you. Whether that's a good reason for it to come easier or not, we needed more of this in our relationship. I'm curious, anybody listening, where they fall on the spectrum of this. So like if you're listening to this live, like go ahead and throw it in the comments, because I was having a conversation with a friend and a couple days ago, and he was telling me he was frustrated about something that had happened with his wife on the way out the door to work, and they just didn't address it. Like it was there was an elephant in the room, kind of like they both knew that the exchange wasn't how they wanted it to go. But when he got home, he was like, I'm not ready to talk about this. And she was kind of the same way. And I'm not sure how many days they didn't need to talk about it or weren't ready to talk about it, but they didn't, like when we would not talk about something, a fight that happened, and it would be, we're just not talking. Like no eye contact. Like if we have to talk to each other, it's very short and rude.
Yeah.
They were like, it wasn't like it didn't happen, but they were very respectful, very nice, and they just weren't ready to talk about it. And I said, I respect that so much. Like I want more of that in me. I want the ability to be like, you know what? It's probably not a good idea to talk about this right now. Give me a night. Let's get into this tomorrow maybe. Because I've never done that. One of the other things that I wrote, and I want to hear what you have in terms of like lessons or suggestions for this in relationship especially, but one of the things that I wrote in preparation for this was something along the lines of like your words can change the course of your life. Your words can change the course of your relationship. Your words can change the course of your child's life. And like oftentimes I want to say, oh, it's just a word, because there's some words that our kids don't like. There's some words that you don't like. It's just a word, but words are incredibly powerful. And so I'll open it up to you. We started off talking about keeping our mouth shut, right? But the flip side of that is, obviously that's illustrating the power of words, the negative power of words, and why when we're angry or emotional, we need to keep our mouth shut. But the flip side of that is the power of positive words. And so like your words can change the course of your marriage, right? Your negative words can change the course of your marriage for the worse, but your positive words can change the course of your marriage for the better. And so I'm curious if you have either lessons, suggestions, tips, tricks, whatever it is, for either not going negative with your words or actually increasing your, like, the positive words.
So what are you asking me?
What do you got? What do you got for lessons? What have you learned in our relationship for how to better use your words? If that's keeping silent, how do you do that? If it's increasing the consistency and the of like your positive words, how do you protect your words? How do you use the power of your words wisely? Let's say that.
Okay. So the language. I think for me, the biggest thing with the language is I was like a always or never type of person, like a black or white. And so I try to, with you and with the kids, I would tend to complain a lot and go to like negative language, like always, you always do this, you never do that. And I think for me, it's choosing different words, like not doing that, even especially like with the kids. And it's so funny because now the kids are like, really, mom, always and never. And I'm like, yes, guys. Yes. Thank you. So I think that's really cool about with the kids because they catch you when you start to switch your language and like have open communication as a family. Yep. They start to call you out on the language that you use. What this made me think of though, which is like completely different than what you're asking me, is the power of your thoughts and just the things that you say common. So for me, it was always and never. And another thing, someone posted this while ago and it like really spoke to me, but like the things you say daily, like I used to say, and I still find myself saying, I'm so tired all the time. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And then I really do believe that when you keep saying that, like you actually physically make yourself tired by repeating that over and over again. And like, granted, I was tired. I didn't sleep well the night before. Saying that and telling my brain that is just making the problem worse. So that's what that made me think of, because I know so many people can relate to saying I'm so tired. A lot of the people that I talk to anyway. And it's just like little things like that. Like, what things on a day-to-day basis are you saying to yourself over and over again? And try to catch yourself when you're saying it. And maybe you won't have another thing to say, but maybe just don't say anything at all. Like, catch yourself saying I'm so tired, and then try to stop yourself.
Yeah.
Each time it will get easier, but that's what that made me think of.
Interesting. That's a good point. There was another quote that I had written down from I think it's Robin Sharma that said it, but words can inspire and words can destroy, so choose yours well. And that was kind of refocusing me on the two aspects of this. Like I said, the word, like keeping your mouth shut when you're going to say something bad, but also the power of saying something positive. And I thought about it, and I was, thinking about the people around me and asking myself the question. So if words can inspire and words can destroy, like, what do I want to be doing to the people around me? If obviously there's more than just those two options, right? But if those are the two options, do I want to inspire or do I want to destroy? Obviously, I don't want to destroy my kids, my wife, my friends. So, like, how can I inspire them? And one of the things that I was talking about with somebody a couple of days ago that was really important for me that you did, actually. And if I take a little bit of a step back, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the 5 love languages. One of my love languages is words of affirmation. And so I think the positive use of words is just as powerful as the negative use of words. And for me, being a words of affirmation love language, that I feel that every day. And so one of the things that I would suggest people do, whether they're dealing with somebody who's a words of affirmation love language or not, because I think this is just as powerful for kids, where sometimes it's harder to tell what love language kids are. I think they kind of all start off with touch and words of affirmation anyways, but then kind of develop into other things too. But one of the things that you did for a while was you were trying to get better at using more words of affirmation for me, because you knew how powerful it was, but it wasn't a habit for you. It wasn't one of your love languages. And I remember at a certain time, you had an alarm in your phone that would go off every single day. And I don't remember exactly what it said, but basically remind you to use the words of affirmation to me. And I stumbled on the knowledge of this because I put 2 and 2 together. This is when I was running a business and I was at the office, and around the same time, I think it was 10 o'clock in the morning, for a number of days in a row, you would send me like what was a really meaningful text message, some words of affirmation, like, I appreciate this about you, or you're so this, or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's always around the same time in the morning. Like, okay. And then slowly I started to catch on, and like, I didn't care. It was still incredibly meaningful to me. Like, you went out of your way. It was almost more meaningful because you went out of your way to make sure you remembered by setting the alarm. So like, that would be one suggestion that I would give people, whether it's literally setting an alarm. I don't think there's any shame in that, to remind a spouse or your children to use words of affirmation, or finding other ways to make it just a consistent habit, right? Like anchoring it or tying it to other things. So one simple way is, like, if you're already doing something, the phrase is habit stacking. So if you're already doing something consistently, building that habit of adding in a comment, a words of affirmation type comment to your kids or to your spouse on top of that habit that's already formed. So if you put your kids to bed every night, as you say, I love you, and you go out the door, add in a words of affirmation type, like, I really appreciate when you did blank today, or like, I love how creative you were being when you were playing this game, or whatever it is, and build it off of another habit. But find different ways to make it habitual, to make it consistent. And I can speak from experience, like, that was really, really meaningful to me even and especially after I found out that it was an alarm that you had set. It wasn't coming naturally to you. It was just that important that you made it happen. So that was something I wanted to add on, like the positive power of words, something that we can all do proactively to increase our positive power, to increase, if we go back to that quote, the words that are inspiring to the people around us. All right. You got anything else in a relationship? We can definitely talk about parenting and anything else after that. But do you have anything else relationship wise in terms of the power of words? Negative, anything at all?
Well, I would just say this is not related. This is in relationships. This is not related to like the power of words. But I was listening to a podcast the other day about communication and like talking to people. And the first thing that came up when I read there are times where my greatest accomplishment was just keeping my mouth shut was not only like in a disagreement, it was actually intentionally listening. And a lot of the times when we're in a conversation with our partner, our kids, or even like a friend, we get super excited and we want to put in like what we want to say, like our opinion or what we're excited about. If it's something that like they're talking about that we're super excited about. And instead just like sit there and listen instead of saying the things that you need to say, like sit and actually listen to the person and wait for them to be done talking and like comment on what they said instead of what you want to say. That's what this made me think of, because I think so many times, even with you and I, if you're excited about something or you're telling me like your feelings on something, I want to jump in and like say my feelings on that or what I heard, and instead just sit and actually listen to what you're saying and not try to finish your sentence or any of that. I think that's really powerful with this part of the what you posted for your spouse, your kids, and your just general relationships.
Yeah, that's I didn't even think of that. That's why I keep you around, because you're always adding things that I didn't even think about. I love that, because to me, immediately wrote that down, and I immediately thought, like, you have to keep your mouth shut in order to listen.
Yeah.
And how many times, like, just thinking about kids, this is so true in a relationship too. But I'm immediately going to kids. I posted something the other day about the 4 most important questions that kids will ask, and one of them is, "Am I heard?" And it's like, well, do we stop what we're doing when our kids are talking to us? Do we make eye contact when they're talking to us? With the little ones, when they're upset and they're trying to tell us something and we can't understand, like this is something that happens often in our house. There's one particular kid I have trouble understanding when she's really upset. Do I get down on her level and carefully listen? Or do I just get frustrated that I can't understand her?
Yeah.
And not try and do anything different? Do I remember the things that our kids tell us? Like, am I heard? Do my parents listen to me? And to me, like, this is really impactful, because in order for me to make my kids feel like I listen to them, like they're heard, I need to keep my mouth shut. And I like to talk. I think everybody probably likes to talk, at least in the comfort of their own home, maybe not publicly, but like there is a problem of, speaking of habits, it's become like conditioned and so much of a habit for so many people to just be like, okay, this is what I want to say. They're in their head. They're not even listening to you. This is what I want to say. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be rude and interrupt. So I'm just going to wait till they're done talking. And then I'm going to say either my part of the story or, well, here's how that happened to me. And they're not listening to what was just said. So I think that was probably one of the best things in this entire conversation so far, is intentionally listening. So thank you for sharing that. Parents, relationships, friends, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You want to switch it up to parenting for a little bit?
Sure.
Let's talk about parenting. Okay. I'll give you, I know that this is, you'll agree, you'll nod your head as I'm saying this because you've seen me struggle with this, but also I think you'll agree that it's important. I'll give you one, and then I want to hear what you have for parenting. But one of the most impactful things for me, one of the most impactful lessons for me in terms of parenting and the words that I use has been like a combination, I guess, of 2 kind of phrases. The first is, your words become their inner voice, which scares the shit out of me. I don't want my voice to be on repeat in their head for the rest of their lives. Not the way that it is now. Like in my best moments, like I would love for them to be able to like play like a highlight reel of my best moments. Like obviously I have good moments, but that's not what they're going to remember. I think somebody in the comments a while back said something like they heard that it takes 10 positive comments to cancel out one negative. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's science behind that. It feels true because we're just hardwired to focus on the negative. We're like just from thousands of years ago, even we're survival mindset, right? So like the negative things get called to our attention because we need to either fix them or avoid them to survive. And I can, from my experience, like you can say one mean thing and then 5 really nice things, and I'm still thinking about the mean thing. So 10 to 1, that ratio sounds about right. But if my words are going to become my kid's inner voice, like that's it. If they're going to focus on the bad things I say, like that scares me. I don't want the negative things that I've said stuck in their head. And the other phrase that I kind of combined with that was just this idea of focusing on the good, not the bad. On if you want them to, let's say, just develop like be more thankful, right? To call it manners if you want, but like when somebody gives them something to say thank you. If you criticize them when they don't say thank you, that's not going to be as impactful as when you praise them or when they do. And when you give them positive reinforcement, they're going to want to do more of that. And yeah, when you give them negative reinforcement, they're going to want to do less of that, but it's going to be more impactful and more loving when you do it by focusing on the positive. And I always talk about, I've used this metaphor in terms of relationships too. This is just as important in a romantic relationship, but the metaphor of like a dog trainer, and a good professional dog trainer does not train the dogs by rubbing their nose in the carpet when they have an accident, right? Like a good trainer, there are plenty of people that do that, but a good dog trainer, if you're going to pay someone to train your dog, they don't train with negative punishment as reinforcement for negative behavior. What they do is they train with positive rewards as reinforcement for the positive behavior they're trying to increase. And if you take that, like they do that for a reason. They're a professional dog trainer for a reason because they know how to train dogs. And maybe not the sexiest metaphor to bring into a relationship or the nicest metaphor to bring into parenting, but it's true. Like we share a lot of similarities with dogs in terms of like, I don't love the word like I'm being trained, right, by Ashley or by anyone else, but it's kind of what it is. Yeah. If you want to see more of a behavior, reward that behavior, even if it's just praise. If you want to see less of a behavior, reward the opposite behavior. Don't punish that behavior. And for me, that shift, like that's been a hard shift to make. In my parenting, in everything, for myself, with you, in my parenting, it's been a really hard shift to make to praise the good instead of criticize the bad. It's so conditioned into me. It's deeply conditioned. It's something I'm really working hard to change, but it's really hard. It's really hard to praise the good instead of criticize the bad. I don't know if that is impactful for you. That, for me, has been incredibly impactful. I've felt it negatively from you, from my parents, from other ways, right? And I've also felt the positive side, like when you praise me for doing well in something, even if it was 1 time out of 10 and you praise the one good time, it makes me want to fix the other 9 instead of you criticize. If you criticize those 9, then I feel like a piece of crap. And I don't want to get better. I just want to like walk away in the other room and get away from you, right? So does that resonate with you too?
There's 2 parts that I have to say about this. I think this comes hard naturally for me and you. And I think a lot of this is the way that we internally speak to ourselves. So I know a lot of people do a lot of things well. We'll talk about like in a year, you do the end of the year and you're like, oh, this year was crap. Nothing good happened. It was such a crappy year. And it's like, well, was it? Yeah. And like, it made me think of, I was at this retreat a few years ago and my friend had gone into this retreat thinking that her year was just not good at all. And then she looked at me and she was like, Ashley, perspective, perspective, perspective. My perspective of the year was crap, but this actually in reality was a pretty good year. And she named off all of these things. And so I think this comes hard for me and you. And I think a lot of people can relate because of the way that we choose to speak to ourselves. So if we're constantly talking negatively about ourselves in our head, it's hard for us not to see the good in what other people do, our spouses, our friends, our kids. It's hard. Like we can see it, but it's hard for us to focus on that part of what they're doing instead of like the negative part of what they're doing or what they don't do, for instance. And I think that's why we did this years ago and then I brought it back. We have like an awesome jar that points out the awesome things that our kids do throughout the day. And we get them to do it too, because some of the older kids can spell and write. We're like, if you see your sibling doing something awesome or mommy and daddy doing something awesome, like put it in the jar, write it on a piece of paper, and we discuss it at dinner every Sunday. This helps them and helps us reframe and change the way that we're thinking and focus on the good things people are doing instead of like the negative things that people are doing. I also had a second part that's going to totally throw off what you were just saying. I do believe that with children, that words are important. I believe what's more important is our body language and our actions.
I'm glad.
Because I can say
I was going to bring that
something.
up.
I can say something to one of our kids, and my tone and my voice is fine, but if my tone is a little off and my body language isn't good, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I said if I said it nicely. They're not going to hear it and they're going to get upset. And every child is different, every person is different, but I can come in and say the same thing to another child and they'll be like, oh, whatever. But it's my body language. It's the way that I'm presenting myself. And for you, unfortunately, you have like this mean, grumpy eyebrow look. And I have to constantly say to you, like, honey, change your face. Change your face. And that stinks for you, but I have to tell you to change your face because they automatically are looking at your facial expression. Like it doesn't matter what you say. It's what is daddy's face saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you the science behind what you just said too. There's a doctor, Albert Moravian, and he has this, I don't know if we call it a model of communication. He said that communication, if you break it down percentage wise, 55% of communication, so take the word communication, what the person you are communicating to receives.
Yeah.
Okay? So 55% of what your children receive when you're talking to them is your body language. 55%, more than half. 38% is your tone of voice. And only 7% of what your children receive when you're talking to them is the actual words you're saying. So do that math another way. 93% of what your children receive when you're talking to them is not your words. 93% is body language and tone of voice. And so if you are, for me, facial language, we'll call it, right? Like there are times where, like you said, there was one specific time with one of our kids. It was upstairs at bed, getting ready for bed, and something happened, and I knew, like, just don't, like, keep your body turned away, because if you look at that child is going to know from your face how pissed you are, and it's not necessary. Like the level of pissed I was not in relation to the deed. And so it was like, I told you after, I was like, you saw me, like I made sure not to look at that child because I knew that was going to spiral the entire interaction between you and the child. And it's like, nope, I'm keeping my face out of this. And it's, if you're mad, I was doing this even this morning with one of our girls. She wasn't listening to me and I was getting frustrated. And I was like hand talking, like not excessively, but I was like, I don't get this. And like angry hand gesture, right? So there's 55% of what she's getting. And then my tone of voice was really frustrated. And I was saying like, honey, can you please just listen when I talk? And it's like, she's not listening to me as I say that. And I'm getting annoyed because she's not listening to me as I'm asking her to listen to me. 93% of what I just gave her was angry hands, tone of voice. And what she's getting is run away before he freaks out instead of listen while he's talking. And like, there's actual science to back that up. That's not just me. 93% is not the words. And that's incredible to me. But at the same time, like, my mom used to say, you can get, what did she say? You can get away with saying almost anything as long as you smile. And
Yeah.
like, I never really took it seriously, but it's the same idea.
Well,
like, you can say,
I don't even
I totally hate you right now. And like, they won't hear the words. They'll see you smiling and laughing.
I don't even need the science because I can tell like you don't have to say anything. And if they do something and then they look at your face, they're like, you're mad at me just from a facial expression. Like I don't even need science. I've seen it happen many times in our household where they can just tell by the reaction of my body or my face what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. The one thing slightly off topic, kind of back to this topic of our words, whether it's the dog trainer metaphor and praising the good instead of criticizing the bad, whether it's the awesome jar, whether it's even this Moravian's model of communication. I got a comment a couple of times from different people, and take this stuff with a grain of salt, but about the idea of like gentle parenting. It's like this, you can call this conscious parenting, you can call this gentle parenting. And the whole myth that gentle parenting creates entitled kids, like people who say that like conscious parenting is bullshit or gentle parenting creates entitled kids, it's not true. It creates kids to feel loved. It's not about making entitled kids. It's not about letting kids get away with misbehaving or anything like that. The same people who are claiming that this type of method leads to entitled kids are the same people who are bitching and whining about how their parents mistreated them and how the world is against them and this, that, and the other thing. And it's ironic, but like if you feel any resistance to this, if you feel, because I'm a skeptical person, and like when I hear this, sometimes I'm like, yeah, but if we only talk about the good, we're not going to address the bad. They're going to think they can get away with it, right? Like looking at the kids, or like even with you, like if you're totally out of line with me and I let it go and I walk away, like, but who's going to punish Ashley? Like she shouldn't have been able to get away with that. That's not fair, right? Like these little nagging ego thoughts, like I have them. So I have to assume a lot of other people have them with this kind of stuff. And every time I've done any of this, the opposite of those nagging thoughts is true. Anytime I let something negative go without criticizing it, and I focus on the positive with my kids, they don't do it more. They don't do the negative more because they got away with it. They respond to the praise. They do the positive more. They want to please us as parents, right? Like that's that power of our kids wanting to please us. In a relationship, like you know when you're out of line. I know when I'm out of line. I don't need to be called out when I was being a dick. I know. And so you being gracious enough to let that go. If it needs to be addressed, it needs to be addressed, right?
Yeah.
But you being gracious enough to let that go, I don't feel like, oh, I can do it again next time. I'm going to be even worse next time because she won't call me. Like, no, I'm like, oh, phew, thank God we didn't need to have a fight about that because I was so out of line. I'm more likely to come apologize. I'm more likely to own my crap. And it's not getting away with anything. So like I've gotten into that conversation with a couple of people, like this whole gentle parenting or letting it go or like whatever. Like, no, like just try it and you'll see. And I'll leave that. I'm a little bit on my soapbox with that one, but I'll leave it at that. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to say to that? Do you have anything else you want to throw in about parenting?
Just say, I don't, so the whole gentle parenting, I went down that and like the whole, whatever it's called, there's so many different labels to parenting. I say just like parent your kids, just like listen to them, be respectful, let them feel heard. And like, I don't believe in like punishment and all of that stuff. I do believe in holding them accountable for their actions. I don't believe in punishing though. But yeah, just parent your kids with love.
Absolutely.
And also, since kids don't learn by words, it's your actions. It's your actions. The adults' actions, the mom and the dad's actions that actually help the children become who they're going to be, not from constantly bickering down their throat about what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The last thing I'll add on that from my personal experience, I read this quote, this Robin Sharma quote earlier: "Words can inspire and words can destroy. Choose yours well." One of my early realizations when we had millions of daughters was this fear that I would break them,
Yeah.
like break their spirit. And obviously fear is not what you want to be motivated by, but it was a really impactful motivational fear to just get my crap together and change and improve and be better for all of my kids. But if we go back to this quote, like, words can destroy, I don't know if anybody can relate to this. If you can relate to this, then it is incredibly powerful. And it's a feeling that I try to avoid, but I actually would encourage you to sit with the feeling for a minute. And if you've ever yelled at your kid, criticized your kid, whether you raised your voice or not, criticized your kid, ripped them apart, like whatever phrase you want to use, if you know the look I'm talking about, you're going to know what I mean. But that look where it's just a broken look, like just dejected, like I'm a piece of crap look on their face. And every time I get that look, it brings me back from the brink. Like, I'm not proud to say that there are times where I still kind of lose my cool and make my kids feel like that. But every time I get that look, which if you've seen it, if you've given a kid this look on their face, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm breaking them. I'm slowly breaking their spirit. I'm slowly breaking their innocence. I'm slowly breaking, like, whatever it is. Words can destroy. And if we go to the Moravian model of communication, so your body language and your tone of voice make up 93% of the communication. Your body language and your tone of voice count in your words, right? So when we say words, we're really talking communication, but it's like words are powerful. The way you talk to your kids is powerful, right? But if 93% of the way that you talk to your kids isn't even your words, then your body language and your tone of voice are even more powerful.
Yeah.
And they count in that words can destroy phrase from Robin Sharma, right? And so, like, my last kind of point is, if you get that look on their face, like, don't avoid that. Well, you don't want to create that look on purpose. What I'm saying when I say don't avoid that is, like, feel the regret in yourself, feel the pain when you know, like, don't hide from the fact that you know you're breaking them, and actually let yourself feel that, because that's what's going to give you a reminder of how powerful words are and help you to break this pattern, this cycle of, whether it's body language, tone of voice, or the actual words coming out of your mouth, that is destroying them. Same thing for your spouse, but especially for your kids. I'll leave it at that. That was something that was on my mind, though.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for me, it was going back. I remember our oldest daughter, there was a one time where I said something or did something and she was really upset, and she had that face, and that face and that expression that she made brought me back to being a little girl and feeling that way. And that was really powerful for me. I was like, I never want to make her feel the way that I once felt before as a kid. And it was really weird. It was a like crazy moment where I could see myself in her, and I was like, whoa, maybe I need to check myself.
Yeah, definitely. All right. That's all I got. I'm sure we could keep talking for a long time, but that's all I got. I appreciate everybody who was in the comment section, giving us comments and interacting. Thank you guys for coming along on the journey this week.
Thanks,
we'll
friends.
Be back.
Hi, friends. If you're enjoying the show, would you please leave a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts for us? Doing this helps more people find the podcast, which means even more people can benefit from the conversations. We really appreciate you and your time, and thanks, as always, for listening.